close to start the event. I would like to say a few words before I let James continue. First, I would like to thank James for accepting to come to Tabara de Testare meetup, testing camp. And I would also want to thank him for getting 66 new members that have joined the meetup, probably just for this particular event.
Hey, cool.
And out of 150 that was the limit, 66 were newcomers. So probably it's a good idea to say something for those who come here for the first time. And I will start with the fact that Tabara de Testare is a testing community in 4 cities in Romania. So Cluj, Bucharest, some of us may be from Bucharest, Iași, and Timișoara. Probably, I would be curious to know if there is somebody from Timișoara here. Can you raise your hand? Okay, so you're from Timișoara. Great. Okay. So Iași? Anybody from Iași? They are in traffic, I guess. Okay. The next thing is about what we want with Tabara de Testare. So we want to encourage people to become better testers. And the second thing that we try to do with this testing community is to encourage people learning from their peers. So these are 2 very important things for testing camp. Now, I will leave James tell you more about his examples with tool-supported testing, or actually tools, not supported tools.
Tool-supported software testing.
Supported software testing, okay? Now I found the title.
Examples of tools supporting software testing, yes.
And if you somehow miss to put the donation that we recommend, then please don't leave before leaving us the 10 RON, because it helps us cover the cost with the venue. So please don't forget about that. And I guess I had one more thing to say. I'm trying to remember. Hello? Yeah, please tell me.
The questions. If anybody has questions.
Yeah, and if anybody has questions, after James finishes...
Or during. Interrupt me at any time.
Okay. Yeah, well, me and Simina will come with microphones so that you can ask whatever you want to ask. Okay? So if you have a question, raise your hand and we'll try to get to you with the microphone.
Do I have a microphone, or maybe I don't need one? Is that mine? Is that mine? Is this on?
Now it's on.
Is it on? Okay, got it. I'm ready. Am I ready?
Are you?
Am I? Whenever you say.
Yeah,
Go. Thank you for letting me speak. It's therapy for me. It makes me feel good. I started speaking at a meetup in Sydney that I almost didn't go to a few months ago because I was feeling like I was getting the flu. And I thought, oh, I really need to lie down. I feel dizzy. But I have to go to the meetup. Oh, I might get other people sick, but I'll stay away from them. I'll just go to the meetup and I'll do my talk. By the end of the talk, I felt great. It might be that I've discovered a cure for the flu. Get up in front of people and speak. It's amazingly rejuvenating. Anyway, thank you for letting me do it. I want to talk about automation. And there's something that really bugs me about automation when people talk about it. And that is, some of the people, many of the people, especially managers, who seem most obsessed with automation, don't seem to know much about it. They say, we have to automate. Okay, what do you mean by automation? Well, like write test cases, and then the testers write test cases, and then automating people will put them into BDD, the scripts, or they'll use Selenium, and they'll make the robots do it. They got to have the robots do it instead of the humans. Robots are better than humans. Robots won't break my heart. That's the only thing they know about automation. Is there's something about robots do it. Robots do it. That's all they know. And that is about the least interesting of all forms of automation. To me, it's like this. Remember the robots that used to be in the old cartoons and television shows of the 50s and the 60s? They would be like, would be like a paint bucket for a head with light bulbs for eyes, and a robot would walk around your house offering you a beverage, sir, and doing the laundry by picking up laundry and washing it, and the robots are going to do all these things for us. And then if you ask it a really hard question, it says, does not compute, and starts smoking. I always wanted that interface on my computer. I want an interface that actually emits smoke whenever something does not compute. That would be great. That's what I remember from those old TV shows. But of course, that's absurd. We don't have robots that pick up your laundry and wash it. But the funny thing is, we actually have robots that clean our laundry. They're called washing machines. That is a robot that cleans your laundry. But you don't think of it as a robot because it doesn't look like a human. And of course, it would be absurd. Like, why does the robot need to look like a human and have human emotions if all it's doing is getting some dirt off your clothes? It doesn't actually need any of that stuff. You don't need to be able to talk to it. This, I think, is a lot of what's going on when people talk about automation in our industry, is what they imagine is, when they think automation, is they say, you see that tester there? The one covered in cloth? Imagine if she was covered in metal. Imagine if she had a paint bucket for a head and light bulbs for eyes, and she would walk around, and it would sit in an office chair and say, hello, human, what testing would you like me to do today? And it could get us coffee and wash our clothes and do errands and also test the software. It would look like a human almost, but not quite, and every once in a while it would ask it to teach it love. And we would say, no, machine, you can't understand love. To me, it would be an outrageously unnecessary thing, and you know this. To make a humanoid-looking robot to test software, we don't need arms, we don't need legs, we don't need all that stuff. So when someone says, I want automation, okay, what do you want for automation? Well, I want it to be just like a tester, and it goes through the product, and it tries, it visits everywhere, and it does all this stuff. Like, okay, that's one kind of automation. What you seem to have in your mind is a human-like but robot, but paid like a robot kind of thing that goes through and presses keys with its robot fingers instead of with human fingers. And the thing is that is complicated and expensive to do if you're going to go through the graphical user interface to do that. Lots of tools have been created to do this, and then the tools become obsolete. I was trying to use Selenium the other day to work with something that's created from d3.js, something like that. And Selenium Recorder IDE couldn't even see it. So I recorded all this stuff, and then Selenium script looks like you clicked once and stopped. Like, no, I did a whole bunch of things. Well, I can't see it. So, new technology comes along. It makes our tools obsolete. People keep innovating with the user interfaces, using different kinds of libraries. Then fine, they've got to innovate, but it makes our tools get blown up. I think that the very idea of GUI level test automation is a little bit interesting and useful here and there, now and then, it does not deserve to be an obsession. It is as silly as building a humanoid robot to set your thermostat for you instead of having a little box on the wall that has all the intelligence needed to set the thermostat for you. And it doesn't need arms and legs. It doesn't need a personality. So what I do when I write tools is find a problem, find a testing problem I want to solve, and then I ask myself, how can a tool help me do this better? And I usually am not thinking, how can a tool do this instead of me? Instead, I'm thinking, how can a tool make me 1,000 times more powerful, 1,000 times more vigilant? I want to do this and have 1,000 other fingers following along with me. How can I increase my power, increase my scope? I'm not interested in testing while I sleep. A lot of people seem obsessed with that. Like, I slept last night and nothing was testing while I slept. That's horrible. Those are wasted hours for testing. We should invest thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars in a tool that will test all night for us while we're not at work. That would be great. I have done that kind of automation. At Borland International in the early 90s, we invested in automation where we were very proud about how a thunderstorm could strike in the middle of it and the power would go out. And when the power came on again, the automation would wake up from its sleep and it would say something has happened and it would reset to the last test that was run and it would keep going. And we thought this was so cool. And it is cool, I guess. And then I hired a guy from IBM who was older than me. And in those days, I had a great advantage because I was a very young manager. When I started at Apple as a manager, I was 20 years old. I was the youngest manager at Apple Computer. Everybody, the interns were older than me. And what the advantage with being a manager who's very young is that people won't listen to you, which saves you a lot. You say, I want everyone to go here. And they say, like, oh, look, the puppy dog is barking at us. Isn't that cute? But I think I'll go here instead, and I guess he'll yell at me later on, he'll bark at me later on, but I'll get over it. You know, so I would hire people who were sometimes in their 20s, but I would also hire people in their 40s who would have no trouble arguing with me and saying, yeah, you told me not to do that, but you were wrong, and I'm proving it right now. See what I did? It works. You said it wouldn't work. So I decided to spend a few days and do this. And I did it on my own time. Sometimes they'd say that, or I did it over lunch. Or sometimes they just said, it was only a couple of days, relax. But look, you said it wouldn't work, James, and it does work. And I would go, oh, thanks. I've learned something. And I came up with a word for this that I hope more managers use, which is constructive insubordination. Happy non-obedience. Happy disobedience. And I decided that was really nice, and I should celebrate it. And it helped to get people to do more of this stuff. Well, this fella from IBM came into my group in 1992, the end of 92. Where we had created this automation that tests debuggers for Borland C++. I was in charge of debugger testing for the Borland C++ and Borland Pascal products. And we always assigned the new guy to the automation because it wasn't much fun. You just have to fix the scripts when they break and all that, and then run them and then produce a little report. And every day the report would be put in a box on my desk. And usually I ignored the reports. But sometimes I looked at them, and I liked that the reports were stacking up, though. It was like, it was progress, you know? Proof that my team was doing something. Well, let me get this straight. All this is nonsense, and I was totally wrong. I was a young idiot. But I learned from that and I got better. That's later though. Right now I was thinking, I get these reports, it counts all the test cases that passed, the test cases that failed, and all that stuff. A feeling of progress. So this fellow from IBM, he's working in my group not more than 3 days. And he comes to me and says, I think we need to do a code review on these test programs. And I said, Mr. IBM, maybe that's how they do it where you come from with all that process. But we're the Borland barbarians. We don't have time for code reviews and stuff. We solve problems on the run. So there's 450 test programs. We don't have time to review it. Okay, so he comes back the next day and says, I think you should do a code review on that. We should do this. I said, as I explained yesterday, that's not going to work here, mister. And the next day, he came back and said, I've completed the code review, and I want to talk over the results. And I said, what? How could you have reviewed 450 test programs in one day? He said it was surprisingly easy, since almost none of them do anything. Just look at them. They don't do anything. I said, what? I've never actually looked at them, so I don't know this, but I'm surprised to hear my testers have assured me that these are useful tests. You mean they're not? He said, well, look for yourself. He said that only about a dozen, maybe 15, I forget the number, but it was less than 20, of all of the automated test scripts that were part of that test suite ever told the debugger to debug anything. They didn't load a process to be debugged. And a debugger's whole idea is you load a process and you do things to the process. It's as if you were testing Microsoft Word, but you were doing everything with it you could without having a document open. So what can you do with Microsoft Word without a document open? You can go to the help menu. You can go see that all these menus are grayed out. Like, oh, we can't do this. We can't close anything. Good, check that off. We were doing extensive checking of all the things no user ever would want to do with our product. And we were almost ignoring all of the interesting things that debuggers do. And I had no clue because I thought it's too hard, it takes too long to read all this code. Now, I was a programmer myself. I came from a programming background. I guess I just assumed that the programmers who wrote this stuff before I showed up in the team were not stupid, that they wouldn't do ridiculously worthless things. But the decision that was made sometime before I took over the team was that we have to get automation going fast. So how do you get it going fast? You want to automate the easiest stuff first. What's the easiest stuff? The stuff that's most useless, the stuff that does the smallest amount. As soon as you have an interesting test, it's a headache. Oh, an interesting test is one where you give it input and then something happens and then you have to figure out what do we want to look at. And then you want to interact with that. And then you say, well, change the sort order. Well, now you have to take more screenshots. And then we have to edit the date out because the date's always going to change and it's going to break every time. So let's not look at the date. And let's do an interesting scenario where you go through a whole series of things like a real user would do. Oh, what a headache. Why don't we just not open a file and take screenshots of the static online help screen, just one after another? Instead of reviewing the help file, we'll just take screenshots, 400 screenshots of the help file. That's what was going on. I felt so humiliated. We worked so hard to get this automation to be bulletproof, but it was bulletproof nothing. And I was burned, and I still bear those scars. You see, it's right there, a little bit of it right there. I still bear the scars from that. I'm a little embarrassed to say this wasn't the only time this kind of thing happened to me as a test manager until I caught on that it's really hard to do human-like test automation through the GUI. It's hard to keep it running. It's a big investment. There are lots of headaches. And then we started experimenting with what can we do with tools. And we found out there's lots you can do with tools that's not that, but is stuff that makes testing come alive. I have to say, I'm a little obsessed with tools. You give me a testing problem, and among the first things I'm going to think of is how can I write a Perl script that will blow the doors off this thing, and all the bugs will come flying out like fireworks. That's really what I think every time. It's like, those other testers, they're going to find one bug at a time, and I'm going to put high pressure water through this thing, and all the bugs will just come exploding out the emergency exit, and they'll surrender to me, and I'll be famous. That's a little of what goes through my head when I'm thinking, how can I use a tool to help? I try to think of a clever thing to do, some kind of offbeat thing that other people wouldn't think of. That's part of what I do. I am a little obsessed with tools. So it really is strange to me when I give warnings about automation and I tell stories about people wasting huge money with automation. And then people go away from that going like, yeah, James doesn't believe in tools. James is like an ancient craftsman from the Middle Ages who believes in crafting one by one from yew branches, the bird houses that will house the owls that will carry messages to the king because he doesn't use electronic wires. No, that's not it at all. I'm Mr. Meccano. I am that Iron Man guy. I'm human on the inside, but the outside is missile stuff and booster jets and grappling hooks, and that's my idea of tool-supported testing in one image is Iron Man, like the movie, Iron Man, okay? I'm in the suit, I build the suit, my suit gives me special powers, but it's still human testing. It's not manual, it's not automated, it's intellectual-driven testing supported by tools, which is exactly what programming is these days too. Programming isn't manual programming. Can you imagine a programmer saying, I want to become an automated programmer. I'm a manual programmer right now, but I'd like to be an automated programmer. Then I can make the big money. What would an automated programmer even be? Like a programmer that uses a compiler? Wait, no, we already have that. Everyone already uses a compiler. A programmer that writes software that acts like a programmer? I don't understand. Every programmer is a programmer who uses tools to get stuff done. And I think not every tester needs to be a tester who uses tools, who builds tools to get stuff done. But every tester is a tester who uses tools to get stuff done. I think instead of saying automated tester versus manual tester, what we should be saying is a coding tester and a non-coding tester. Like you might be a tester who doesn't write code. Okay, you still use tools. You use Excel, you use databases, you might query things with SQL Server, you might participate in paired programming even. I've had people participate in paired programming who aren't remotely programmers, who've never programmed before, and they've helped me see bugs and mistakes in my own code. You know, try it sometime. Writing software with someone who knows nothing about programming, and you will find that you are a better programmer. I did it with my sister. She had never programmed before. And I told her, okay, so here's how this works. There's got to be a semicolon at the end of every line. There's no semicolon on that line. Okay, that was a mistake. I'll put the semicolon on there. Okay, now there's a $sign before identifiers. What about that one? Okay, I'll add one there. Okay, thank you. And I found that explaining it to her as we went was interesting for her, but it helped me think in a more organized way, and she actually was spotting my little typos and wondering, why did I do it this way instead of another way, and couldn't you just use Excel for this? Why are you even writing a program, James? You know, that kind of thing. So it was remarkably productive, I found, but she didn't know anything about programming. So even if you're a non-coding tester, you can do a lot with tools, you can interact with tools, you can interact with developers. And I don't believe all testers should become coding testers, because when you know how to code, it changes you. And you can't go back, I don't think. Once you get comfortable coding, you begin to see things as these very tiny logical progressions. You break things down and say, oh, I see how that can work. But when you don't know how to code, you have a more free imagination. Well, maybe magic bunnies make it work. Who knows? And so you're less likely to say, oh, I won't bother to do this test because I know it can't possibly fail. That's what a programmer is likely to say. It can't possibly fail. There's no way it can possibly fail. And these are based on reasonable assumptions that the programmer is making, but maybe the assumptions are wrong, and once in a while they are. We programmers need testers who are not going to automatically turn away from certain dark corners that we programmers are sure are safe. We want you to look into those corners. We need, if we know what we're doing, we need you to. Now, I wouldn't say ignore what a developer says. For instance, you could be testing a website, let's say CNN.com, right? The news site. Okay, you can test it this way. You can take the scroll bar thumb and move it up and down really fast and say, well, can I shake any of the text off the page? Is all the text glued properly to the page? And that might be rather silly to do that, but if you don't know anything about the technology, you might go, I can shake it off. I saw it once. And the developers will just go like, Tester, please don't waste time like that. So don't totally ignore the developer. I'm not talking about that. Learn a little bit about the technology, but I do think that it is very powerful that you have a mix of people on teams, and some people are really into building stuff, and other people are really into seeing stuff and interacting with stuff and interacting with people. Maybe you specialize in people instead of tools. All right, now having said that, I'm going to show you some examples of how I do automation. And what you will see, I want you to look for this. I want you to look for, where are my test cases? You might find it's rather difficult to find my test cases sometimes. Maybe it's really hard to find my test cases because I don't even think about creating a test case and then automating it. I just think, what do I need to do to test? Here's an example. There's a product called SearchFlow. This product allows solicitors in the United Kingdom to search for information about addresses, about properties, real estate, so that they can discover legal information about it to help their clients purchase those properties. So the test manager there asked me for help. She set to me this question. She said, we're about to move from an old system to a newer system. I'm worried about data corruption. How can I detect if the new system can still access the same data and it isn't corrupted, it produces the right results? So I said, how about if you wrote something that would just download a whole bunch of data through your system, and then you change the system and it would download the same data again, and it would compare those, and it would look for any changes, and then you could investigate each change. It's not so hard. For instance, I said, you could search for every postcode in the UK, every single one, and take one address from every single postcode. So I'm thinking there's 10,000 postcodes. That shouldn't be too hard, right? So I said, tell your automation guy to do that. And she said, oh, our automation guy only knows about selenium and he doesn't know what to do. So I said, I'll do it for you then. But you need to get an automation person in your team who knows how to be a programmer and isn't just a selenium jockey. So I went to Google and I commanded Google to give me all of the postcodes in the UK, and it says 1.8 million. Oh my God. There are 1.8 million. So, okay, new plan. In this version of the plan, we will do sampling. I sampled 1,000 postcodes from all of the postcodes. So I downloaded the file from WikiLeaks is where I found it. You can barely see it up there, but there's a file. And I noticed something interesting. There's latitudes and longitudes. Oh, I didn't know that. Latitudes and longitudes for the postcodes. That's kind of cool. So I said, you know what? I can make a map, a geographic map of all the postcodes that we've sampled, and you can show it to your developers, show it to your managers, and say, look, we've randomly selected these locations from all over the UK. So first, I wrote a program to sample the data. This is a short Perl program that just gets 1,000 random addresses from that, and it ends up with this thing right here. This is just this smaller file. Now that we deal with that file, I wrote a little program in a language called R. And if you don't know about R, those of you who are programmers here, you really should learn R. It's pretty cool. R is a data analysis language with huge library support that can do all kinds of cool things, from experiment design type things to analyzing patterns and output. It's really fascinating. So I decided, because I was trying to learn R, that I would create this geographic map, and that's all the code you need to do it. Of course, I told her when I did this, I said, it's going to take me only 30 minutes. R can just do that. And as you see, there's very little code. But that's 3 hours of code right there. That's 3 hours of code because the first library I tried didn't work. And I tried 2.5 hours to make the darn library work. I thought, it's got to be just me. I'm sure I'm just using it wrong. And I wrote lots of variations of the code, and I just could not get the little dots on the map the way the package said. So eventually I said, forget this, threw away that code, and I said, there's got to be another library that does GIS mapping, and there was, and it was a map that actually worked, and it created this map. And there you have the UK zoomed into to part of the UK anyway. And my client, the test manager who asked me to do this, I showed her the map triumphantly, and she said, well, our product only covers England. Oh, okay, so it's a good thing I did the map then. So you can see it's not Scotland. Okay, so not Northern Ireland, not Scotland. I went back and changed the program to narrow it down. Oh, cool. So the map actually helped me do something. Then I wrote this code. Now, I usually work in Perl. That's the language I'm most comfortable in. I usually advise people to learn Python. I figure Python's probably better than Perl these days. I don't actually know Python, but everyone who knows Python keeps telling me it's better than Perl. And how could all those Python-obsessed people be wrong about Python? So I just suggest maybe people should learn Python unless they're really smart. Then they can learn Perl. No, honestly, I can't honestly think of a really good reason why you should go with Perl instead of Python these days. But Perl is particularly good at text manipulation. It was designed for text manipulation. And for testers, that is pretty powerful when you can do a lot of things with text manipulation. A lot of what I do in testing ends up being manipulating data files, and most of the data files end up being structured as text files. So I wrote some code, and this is the only code that actually pretends to be a user. But it doesn't go through the user interface. I didn't use Selenium for this. I went right to the server. When I want to drive a web app, I want to, generally speaking, ignore the user interface and go to the server because the user interface is a turbulent place. Of course, for a lot of these apps these days, there's a whole lot of stuff going on in JavaScript, so you'd be skipping a lot of testing if you ignored the user interface. So I can see why you might want to use Selenium, and I played with Selenium the other day. It seems like a pretty mature tool. It can do a lot of things, except that there are some things it can't see. But most of what I do when I do web-based testing is I use my Perl scripts to run right at the server, bypass the UI, and and end up testing that server layer. It's essentially API testing because the HTTP interface is essentially an API. Anyway, this is my little code to do that, and this took probably an hour, less than an hour to create. And I run it, and it produces all these addresses. All these addresses come streaming out of it. And remember, my first idea is I would take one address from every postcode, but it turns out it's so easy to just keep all the addresses. I ended up with 18,000 addresses, and I thought, that's it. That's my master file. I'll save these, and then when the product changes, we just compare it. Simple as that. Not only that, I don't have to wait till the new system. I can actually just run this every day and see if there are any changes every day. Maybe something will get corrupted, so I don't have to wait. Then I thought, but is there something more that I can do? Is there something I can do to analyze this right here and look for trouble in it? And here's what I come up with. We know that each address is supposed to have a postcode in the final field. So I wrote a little automated check to just go through the data and make sure that there was a postcode in the final field. Yes. Each address has to be unique. So I wrote a check for that. Yes, they're all unique. Each postcode returns a non-empty result. Not so. In 31 cases, I got an empty result. So I told the tester about it. I read her off the list of the postcodes that had an empty result. I said, maybe you have a bug here. You should look into it. She got back to me in a few minutes with something I could have done myself. She just tried it through the user interface, and she said, oh, it's giving you a message that says, there are too many results for this search. Please narrow down your search. But my tool wasn't designed for that particular condition, so my tool just comes back to me like a little child and says, I tried to do it, but it wouldn't work. Empty result. I read recently that we don't have to worry exactly about robot overlords, Skynet, that sort of thing. Because artificial intelligence isn't like an overlord, it's like a child. Artificial intelligence needs humans to smooth the way for it, we have to alter our behavior so that Siri can help us, right? I said to Siri once, I'm thinking of reading a novel. And Siri didn't say to me what any human would say, which is, oh, what brings this on? Feeling depressed? Is there any particular novel you had in mind? Is this something you saw on TV, or what sort of novel do you think you want to read? That's what I would expect a human to say. Siri said something like, I've done a search for new novel. Here are the results. Like, oh, really? Siri is always in a hurry. She's always like, I know exactly what you think. Shut up. Don't explain it. I'm not going to ask any follow-up questions. I have to adjust my behavior to use Siri, because she's not going to adjust for me. Okay? It's actually probably pretty good practice for young boyfriends out there, come to think of it. But the point is that we have to smooth the way for artificial intelligence. It's like a child. So imagine the robot overlord Skynet, which is shooting at you with machine guns through its avatars, and then suddenly it stops, and then there's a message that gets texted to you, like, can you please reboot my Terminator? I can't reach the plug. Please. I think something's wrong with my router. Can you reboot it, please? I wrote an essay once on my blog called The Future Will Need Us to Reboot It. where I try to refute the idea that computers will become so smart that humans will be just swept away. Yes, until bugs come in and destroy everything. Imagine how 1 billion years ago a single-celled organism was right here in this room saying, multicellular organisms are, they're fancy, they're big, they're powerful, they're the new thing. But I'll bet you in 1 billion years, single-celled organisms will still be ruling the world. And that is exactly the truth. Single-cell organisms do rule the world today. Most forms of life are single-cell organisms. So I think in the future, no matter how great the AI becomes, little bugs and humans like us will actually be able to destabilize the whole thing anytime we want. And this is a very important lesson about automation, because our managers keep thinking, just automate it and everything's going to be fine. And it's a little like someone who says, just buy that special vegetable chopper machine I saw on late night TV last night, and then we will never have to chop vegetables again. And then you buy it, and it breaks down in like 3 days because it's made of cheap plastic. And you go, oh, now we have to get it fixed. We have to get a new blade for it. Might as well just order a whole new one. And then after a while, all of these little devices you got are all piling up, and they're in different stages of being broken, of headed toward obsolescence, of needing maintenance, of needing to be re-oiled or whatever, or sharpened. And meanwhile, good old knives and cutting boards and all that seem to keep working day in and day out. So maintenance cost is a big deal, but there's a reason why managers don't know about maintenance cost. It's because people like us are hiding it from them. And you know why you're hiding it from them. It's the same reason why I didn't want to tell my client after I said, it'll take 30 minutes to get you that GIS map. I didn't want to say, oh, it was 3 hours. I wanted her to think that I'm highly capable, that I'm amazing. I don't want to be saying, like, I'm going to fly over there in my super robot suit, and then she says, oh, why are you late? I don't want to say, I put the wrong fuel in the rocket booster, and then I had to clean the whole thing out because it reacts with the right fuel. I had to clean the whole thing out, and then I had to replace one of the nozzles because I noticed it was worn out a little bit, safety first. And then I had to fill up all the fuel again, and then I could light the boosters and fly over there in 2 minutes. I don't want to say that, so I say, I fought some bad guys on the way, or like, I took the scenic route. Don't ask too many questions. And a lot of automators, they don't want their management to know that they work day and night to keep the darn thing running, because they think, well, management's going to catch on that this automation thing isn't a magical solution to all their problems, and then they'll fire me. Then they'll say, maybe the problem is you, automator, because I heard that this automation was supposed to save a whole lot of time and money, and then we're not doing it, so the automator must be the one who needs to be fired. Obviously, you're incompetent. Well, you don't want anyone to say that about you, so you want to hide these difficulties. The truth is, these difficulties aren't your fault. The truth is, these difficulties are endemic to the whole automation process. And yet we keep management unaware of them, the same way a child might break a dish and then hide it under the couch so that mommy can't see it. The final thing that I found was that in 11 out of 1,000 cases, the postcode that was returned did not match the postcode that I searched for. That turned out to be data corruption in the database. I found a real bug with my automation. Now notice that this bug, it only happens about 1 out of 100 searches. This is exactly the kind of thing it's very hard for a human to find, but really easy for a machine to find. What I want humans to do is to be smart, think of cool things. Oh, I have an idea for a test. we can compare this to this and do this and that. And then I want to think, how can I get a tool that can multiply that by 100, multiply that by 1,000, and do 1,000 tiny variations of that? It's still not the same as a human doing it even once. Because remember the 31 instances of the empty results? If I had, as a human, done any one of those 31, I would have instantly seen it's not a bug. But my tool couldn't do that. So it just comes back and gives me this mystery that I have to solve where some things are empty. And then I, the human, have to go through and figure out, was it a little thing that went wrong and then my tool instantly gave up like an 8-year-old child? So that's one example. I will now run through other examples more quickly because I want you to see variety in this. Automation, dudes. That's automation right there. Somebody's software says it's filter check time. Obviously, when it's filter check time, no matter what's going on, we must bring everything to a halt. Filter check! And you can't turn it off?
It will go away.
You sure it'll go away? Notice what it says. It says the filter check time has elapsed. And it says, if necessary, replace it. Why is it saying if necessary? Doesn't it know? Oh, it doesn't. It needs a human to find out. Isn't that just the way it goes? Automation gets all the glory, and the human does the hard work. Okay, so here's another thing. The SearchFlow product is created with a system called Drools. I don't know if you've heard of it. I hadn't heard of it. It's a system where you create these flowcharts and you populate these tables, and then it will automatically write the code for or some of the code for your website. Hey, that does sound like automated programming almost, except the programmers, of course, have to do a lot of work to actually get it to do the things it's supposed to do. So they're working a lot with these kinds of flowcharts. The test manager came to me and said, James, is there any way that we can automatically detect all of the flows that we might want to test through these flowcharts so that the testers don't have to do that by hand? That way when they update the flowcharts, we can automatically update the flows. I said, that sounds cool. Send me the XML repository. So she sent it to me. It looks like this. And I began analyzing it, and through doing various searches to compare the flowchart with the XML, I found the place that I have to look at in order for my program to start walking through the flowchart. I also learned about business process model and notation, which is quite fascinating stuff. And I wish that I got to work with this stuff more because it's very interesting. So I learned about that. Then I went to my Perl and I got a library that can parse XML, and I used that library to write this code. Now this code took a little longer than the other code to write. It took me about a day and a half to get all this working. And I also spent 6 hours in a ultimately futile, wasted effort. And anyone who's an automator in here knows what I'm talking about. You put together some like cool automation thing, and you think of a cool feature you want to add to it, and you go like, this is going to be so impressive. This is going to be really cool when they see it. And then in this case, what I wanted to do is I wanted to parse the flowchart. Then I wanted to create a graphical flowchart that was the exact thing, and then compare them, and to demonstrate to management, look, I really do understand. My program really does understand these flowcharts. This is the closest I could get, which is horrible. I tried YAML and YED and various libraries, and everything sucked. It was horrible. I couldn't get a nice looking flowchart with a readily available library, but I didn't want to give up, so 6 hours went by before I finally said, I'm throwing in the towel. Maybe there's a way to do this, but I don't know how. And I went back to my main thread. My main thread is generating the flows. So I had to think, how can I generate these flows? I decided the easiest way to do it would be to randomly generate flows, just randomly walk through the flowcharts until I'd covered every condition, and then I would have a whole bunch of flows, and then I would get rid of one flow at a time, like playing a Jenga game, until I would uncover something that needed to be covered, and then I would declare that that is the minimal set. So that was my first attempt. And so I came up with this little idea, and it goes like this. I hope you can see it. We'll see if it works here. There it goes. So my program just walks through, and then every time it finds a decision, it does a little coin flip, and then it marks the result of the thing. So it's doing it again, coin flip, and it ends up doing the same one as last time. So there's another one, coin flip. This time it gets a different path, and it does another coin flip, and that goes to the end. But you see there's one thing that's still not covered, so we have to keep doing it until everything gets covered. And in 5 paths in this little simulation here, it should figure out, oh, there we go, and it's done it, and boom. And it goes around a couple of times, and then it's going to say, we're good, we're done. Okay, that's basically how it works. At first, my client thought there was a bug in my program because she said that my tool said there were only 2 paths needed to cover this. And she said, isn't it 3? Because there's straight through, and then there's one where you have to go around and come back, and then another one where you have to go forward. So that's 3, right? I thought there was a bug too until I looked carefully at what my program decided. And what it did is its first one, it went in a big loop back, and the second one, it just did that. So it never did the one that was straight across. Isn't it kind of interesting that a human, we just naturally look at it and we go, well, obviously one of the cases is just straight through. Got to have that one. But the tool doesn't care about that, doesn't care about our biases. That's one reason why I kind of like the idea that you got to have humans around, because, hey, that straight across path is an interesting path too. Maybe that would be an interesting thing to have that path as well. But these 2 paths do cover all of the decisions and all of the segments. So if that's the only thing we care about, then 2 paths will be enough. And then this was the ultimate result that the testers would see. A series of steps for each of the scenarios would be put into a spreadsheet, and what the testers would have to do is turn that into a test. So the testers actually still have a lot to do. You look at this, and you've got to navigate the user interface, and you have to know enough about the tool to know what these little things mean. It says assign globals, update order item process IDs, get order item status. Maybe some of those don't even relate to user interface. So even though I've created these, I haven't eliminated the problem of that the human testers have to do. I hope what I've done is made that problem a little more interesting for them by giving them this list that they can be sure will cover lots of interesting things, but they still can creatively add to this. They can creatively interpret it. There still is skilled, interesting work left to do here. I don't want tools that remove skilled, interesting work. At best, or at worst, I should say, what I want my tool to do is shift the work to a little bit of different, interesting intellectual work where we cover more of the product and we feel that we have a more reliable test regime. Okay, I'm going to skip that. Now I'm going to show you a couple other things. Okay. Do you know about PSR? Does anyone here know what PSR is? 0 people know what PSR is. Does anyone here work with Windows 7 or Windows 10? Oh, they don't have Windows in this country. That's the problem. All right, I have to go back to the beginning. There's this thing called Windows. Really, really interesting. I've been obsessed with it for years. Windows, this operating system. It's the new thing. Seriously, I think you're just not raising your hands because you're not hand raisers, are you? Is it like unlucky to raise your hands after 6 p.m.? It's probably something like that, isn't it? You must know about Windows 7 and Windows 10. I'm going to pretend you do. So if anyone wants to come up with me afterwards and say, this thing you call Windows sounds wondrous, please tell me more, then I'll fill you in offline. Shipping on Windows 7 and Windows 10 as part of the operating system is a tool called PSR. It's called Problem Steps Recorder. And it's given to you by... oh, I didn't use the right Romanian term for it. I'm sorry, Problem Steps Recorder. I didn't realize I spoke any Romanian, but I guess I must have, whatever. Problem Steps Recorder, it says PSR when you try to go, whatever. So Problem Steps Recorder, it watches you as you test, and it will keep a record of what you touched, and it keeps screenshots. And until recently, until Windows 10, it limited you to 100 screenshots. It is now up to like 999. I just tried 999 last night, and it worked. Except that after 206 screenshots, all the screenshots were corrupted after that. So maybe that's why they don't want you to type in 999. It creates this huge file because all those screenshots are there, obviously. But it also gives you a text record of all the things you clicked on, all the fields you touched. It's pretty cool. Unfortunately, for security reasons, it doesn't keep track of all the things you typed. I thought that's strange. Like, how come I don't get the things that I typed? That's probably very easy to log. And then I realized, yeah, that's called a keylogger, and people who try to take over your system and steal your passwords, they love it when you have a keylogger running. So they probably made it so that the tool can't do that, so a hacker can't take over your system and use Microsoft's own technology to spy on you. I figure that's probably what it is. Well, I wrote a tool that takes the output from PSR. Let me get rid of that. It takes the output from PSR. Where's my PSR? There it is. And it turns it into a file a text file that you can paste into Xmind. And if you do that, it looks like this. There's my Xmind. There it is. This is from me playing with a product called Focuswriter. Yes, that's what it is. So what it is just a hierarchy of all of the user interface elements in Focuswriter that I touched while PSR was running. So I have an automatic outline of the product, which is pretty cool because, as you know, when you get a new feature or you get a new product, one of the things you might want to do as a tester that I generally do is I make an outline of all the different elements that I might want to test. And I don't want to type that in. I want it to type itself in if I can. This allows me to do some of that. Also, it lets you have testing competitions like this. My colleague Anne-Marie Charrett and I did a little 30-minute competition in testing a little product. Each of us tried to touch every bit of its user interface in 30 minutes without using notes. Just look at the user interface and touch every bit of it. So we were just trying to do the same thing. I run my program to parse the results, and then I put it into WinMerge. Oh, by the way, every tool I'm going to show you is free. I'm not using any tools that I pay any money for. It's very important for you not to use tools that you pay money for. If you pay money for a tool, it's like when your grandmother gives you a sweater at Christmas. You have to wear it. If you go to a very expensive restaurant and you pay $1,000 for a dessert and it comes to you and it's this giant cockroach that's still alive, you're going to eat it. You paid $1,000 for it. You're going to say, I guess this is what rich people do, and you're going to eat it. You won't be able to admit that maybe you should have read more carefully, La Cucaracha Livioso. Okay, maybe next time you'll read, just go for the chocolate decadence next time. It was cheaper anyway. So, when people buy expensive tools, you're not the one that buys the expensive tool, right? It's your manager's manager that approved the $100,000 site license. And then they say, look, I bought you the tool that the guy who sold it to me said was all you needed. Just plant these magic beans in your testing garden and you'll have a great beanstalk that will test everything. So you go like, I guess I have to climb the beanstalk now, even though it's probably a bad idea. And that happened to me. I had a manager that bought a test tool that was very expensive and didn't ask me first. And so I had no chance to say, no, it's too late. So we had to try to use it for about 6 months until he graciously let us stop using it because it didn't work. It didn't work. And I keep seeing that. We use Windrunner. And it can't do this, and it can't do that, but we use Windrunner. And I go, here's a free tool, Perl, and it can do this. And I wrote the code last night, and here it is actually doing it. Oh, but we use Windrunner. Windrunner can't do it. Oh, maybe we need to fire the Windrunner guy then and get a new Windrunner guy. And this actually happened to me, where I had a client saying this, and I said to the client, I know what's going on. You paid a lot of money for Windrunner, didn't you? You don't want to admit there was a free tool that could have done this better, do you? I get it. He said, no, not at all. We just think Windrunner's a really good tool. Oh, okay. I'm sorry. So someone who knows nothing about testing, is telling me, a internationally known testing expert, that I'm totally wrong and this is a fantastic tool, and the tool that I use, that I just demonstrated, actually does what you want to do. That's crap. Okay, I get it now. I didn't work there much longer. People sometimes don't like it when I talk to them that way. A surprising number of people do seem to like it when I talk to them that way. I'm a little like one of those, what do they call them, dominatrixes? When people hire me, they kind of know they're going to get yelled at, and they kind of want to be yelled at, I think. So I try to oblige them. It comes from having a reputation that I have. Anyway, here's what happens. So Anne-Marie, she does her thing, and I do my thing. Bloop-a-doop-a-doo. And we go, 30 minutes is up. Boom. And I took her recording, I took my recording, and we ran them through the tool, and here's the difference. And she had clicked the accept button once when I didn't. But I found I did the save as profile. She had forgotten to do the save as profile thing, which brings up another little dialog box, so I got extra points because I touched that. But the whole point of this was to realize that if you're doing regression testing in an exploratory, fun, playful way, not following a script, but instead someone says, we've done some changes, can you just run through everything again real quickly? It's really boring to run through 100 scripts. But it's kind of fun to say, okay, time me. And let's see how quickly I can touch every single feature in this product without using any notes, just off the top of my head. And then you do this, and then you record it, and then you can run a tool like this that will tell you, oh, you forgot to test 3 things. Because you see, I can take 10 of these recordings, I can take 50 of these recordings, I can add them all together, run it through my tool, and now that's a complete or much more complete story of all the things I could touch. And that way, every new recording can be compared against the master recording of all the other times everyone's ever touched this thing. And that way we'll be pretty confident that if we miss something, it's going to show up when we do this diff.
But this works only for certain type of applications.
Yes, only web applications. There's only a few of those out there. Actually, PSR is good with browser-based apps.
Okay.
But, of course, there's lots of things in browser-based apps that PSR gets confused and doesn't know what to do with. Also, it's better with Windows apps which have common controls, because if you don't have common controls, it's just it says I don't understand it. You just clicked on window X, and so there's limitations. All throughout there, there's limitations. Every single thing I'm going to show you is cool and has depressing limitations. But the point is that when we learn about these tools, and we can recognize when we have just run into a situation when it would be perfect to use this tool. So what a good toolsmith does, and I like that better than automator. What does a toolsmith do? A toolsmith makes it his job to be an encyclopedia of tools, especially free tools that we can just Google for and download. And when someone has a problem, I go, I have a tool for you right now. And maybe I build the tool, but often I just download it. Now this doesn't work if you work at a bank, then you know what I'm talking about. You're going to find out that, wait, is your tool on the approved list? IT has an approved list, and you say, what's on the approved list? And it's like, well, there's Windows 95, you can use that. Notepad, you can use that. Like, oh my God. Some of these lists, I had to go through this with a client of mine recently, a big bank, and I gave them a list of all the tools that I would need on my computer, and they said, can't you just choose from our official list? And I was all ready to yell at them, and then I looked at their official list, and it actually had lots of good stuff on it. So then it was like being in a candy store. Ooh, I want one of those, and one of those, and one of those. Oh, that's a Python environment. I want that. And a Python editor. Yeah, give me that. I get to learn Python. And there's an R. I want an R. So I made it turned out most of the stuff that I wanted was actually on their approved list. So it only took a couple of weeks for them to get around to put it on my system, which is all locked down, so I can't just download it myself, right? I came up with a heuristic out of that, though, which is, this is a formula for how long it takes IT to do a 15-minute task for you. It takes, in days, 2 to the power of the number of levels you are below the CEO, plus 1 divided by 96, which is 15 minutes, if you're wondering. That's how long it takes. So it was like 2 weeks to get certain things that I needed on my system, that I'm sure the guy who ran the bank would just be able to snap his fingers. He could have all the Python he wanted. All right, so, okay, I'm going to show you a few more things because I need to show you variety. So, okay, here's another one. I was testing Xmind. If you're not familiar with Xmind, what are you? Crazy? Xmind is fantastic. Don't get the pro version. The pro version is worthless, but the free version is great. The pro version has a bunch of goofy features nobody needs, and it has all of the glitches that you've come to expect from the free version. The free version is glitchy, but it's still pretty bulletproof. It's still pretty good. So here is a mind map that I use in testing that I want to recommend for you, too. Here, as you can see. It's zoomed out a little bit. It's pretty big. What this mind map is I decided I wanted to test Xmind, but I wanted to stress test Xmind. So I wanted a really big mind map. So I wrote a little code that would randomly generate a mind map that would have random labels in it, random icons and markers, they call them markers, random labels. So if you zoom in on this thing, everything has a marker, that randomly chosen from the list of all the markers that it can have. And a later version of this added random notes, random attachments, all this stuff. And the cool thing is now that what you do as a tester, you see, is you load this, and then all you need to do is anything you want to do with XMind, and it becomes a stress test. It's like having dinner with somebody is not stress testing them, right? I mean, just having a meal, having lunch with someone. If I want to stress test you, I wouldn't say, like, let's just have lunch. And, like, we go to a pizza place, we have some pizza. That wouldn't be stress testing you. But what if I made you hold a beehive while we were doing this? And someone was hitting you with pillows, and someone else was yelling at you in Chinese. And, you know, then I am just having lunch with you. Like, I'm just doing, like, regular things, right? But you're pretty stressed. So this is what this is. I'm creating a stressful background condition, and now all I have to do is a sanity check, if I want to, of XMind, or I can do interesting things with XMind. I'm going to do different testing with XMind with this massive thing loaded, which has 4,500 nodes in it. And so when I do something like, oh, how about if I export? Because exporting is good. And I say, how do I want to export it? I'm going to use something that's not a... Is there any exporting thing? I think there's an image that I don't have to have the pro version for. Let's try image. Generating preview image. Okay, PNG file. Okay, that's good. Not responding. Oh, couldn't create source image to preview. Oh, runtime error. Report to us, close. Failed to generate preview image. Oh, okay, see? That's this kind of stress testing. So now I can cut things out of this and see how big does it have to be before this happens? Does it happen all the time or just with my little stress file? And how come it says it can't generate a preview image there, but it does generate an overview image here? So it seems like this is able to do it. So that seems like a strange inconsistency. Okay, so that's that one. Now I'll give you... here's another one. Have you ever tested a website and it's full of... it's like one of these e-commerce websites. It's full of forms and drop-down boxes where you select things, right? And you have to figure out how to test this. And you want to test it systematically. So that means you want to know what all the options are. Isn't it a pain to have to write them down? You don't want to write them down, so what you do is you go to the source code. Well, it's also a pain to go to the source code because they're scattered all over the place and the source code's full of other stuff. So I wrote a tool that takes any web page you give it and automatically extracts every different kind of HTML object that might be useful for testing, and then puts all objects of that type together in one list. Therefore, when I went to this eBay site, the eBay motorcycle shop, I get all the option values for the different categories of things. I get a whole bunch of links. They're all in the link section. Where is this? Let's move it over here. Where are you? I had something interesting and then... here is a big list of different car models. I'm not sure because I thought this was the motorcycle. Maybe it wasn't the motorcycle. Ford, Chevy, different things like that. Model years, makes... all this stuff. I now have it right here. I can now take it from here and I can copy it into different places, into spreadsheets or whatever I want. Less typing, less hunting around. And it also does this with hidden fields, so that there are hidden forms, hidden fields on your website. You will immediately see that. So this is a tool that helps when you are just encountering some kind of new site, but it also helps if you suspect that the page has been changed, but no one has told you that anything has changed, you can run this twice and then do a diff. And then you go, aha, they added an option, or they took an option away, or they changed the form. Aha, and they didn't tell me. But I like to go to developers and say, I like it when you tell me that there are changes, developer, but fear not. For whether you tell me or not, I know your mind. I see the shadows that are in your heart. Because I got my scraper tool. So don't worry too much. Okay, I've got a couple more and I'll be done. Just a couple more. Oh, it's just so much fun to do it. There has to be variety. We need variety in order for me to make the point that I'm trying to make. So let me see. Okay, this one. I was helping to test an FCC bidding system. They were telling me about all these combinations of things that had to be tried in the bidding scenarios. And I thought to myself, I wish there was some kind of thing like a logic program that would automatically analyze logic and then produce test cases. And then I realized any programming language is that. You could do this in any programming language. So then in just a few minutes, I typed in this code into Perl, which is just a set of nested for and if statements saying yes and no, and it automatically handles all of the dependencies. And so it generates 26 test cases just by running this one-page set of code. That was a way of using tools that I always could do, but never occurred to me that I could do. And this afternoon, I decided to make a visual representation of all of these combinations. And here's the visual representation. This visual representation of that code took me an hour to put together, and I can zoom out here. And it has all of the same dependencies in it. But this is kind of awkward to edit, awkward to deal with. It is easier to see, and now I just had an idea that I want to write a program that reads my other program and automatically makes this picture. I think that would be pretty cool. Automatically make a picture like this in Excel. So I just asked myself to do that right now as I was standing here. That would be very nice. But what I actually did is they had this messy whiteboard where they had made little lines and said, well, we have to do, what if there's a new high bidder? And what if there's a withdrawn high bid? And when you withdraw a high bid, is there a lower bidder available who now becomes the high bid? But if that is true and that is not true, then we do this. But if that's true, then we do that. And so there were all these interesting dependencies. So I just had this messy whiteboard to work with, and I went right from the whiteboard to writing the code and got all the test cases. That's actually how I did it. And it was very nice and easy. So that means if you don't already know how to write code like this, make a friend who does. And next time you have a complicated combinatorial testing thing, maybe say, hey, maybe you can create one of these programs where it's just a set of nested for and if loops. Surely someone as smart as you could do that, and then you could automatically generate my cases for me. What say you, toolsmith? And they should say yes. Which reminds me, the things that I'm showing you here, many of them I'm happy to just give you, which means that I need to create a zip file that is put up somewhere, and someone needs to tell you where the zip file is. So I'm going to put some of this stuff together in a way you can download it. And I'm going to tell Oana where it is. And then you can look at this closely for yourself. Feel free to email me, Skype me, ask me questions about it, all that you want. All right, last one. This is my big finale. Somebody asked me to help them with performance testing, and they use a special performance testing tool. And they said, James, we don't have use cases for performance of this website that manages expense reports. create use cases for us. So I said, okay. And I tried creating a few little use cases, and it felt very inefficient. So I wrote this program. And what this program does, this took me all night to write. This program is actually several different programs. Each one, when it runs in its own space, simulates a person who is submitting expense reports or approving expense reports, or an accountant who's approving on the third level, or rejecting expense reports, approving, rejecting. So this is just a simulation of a bunch of people using the system. So I figured this is the use case right here. This is generating a whole bunch of activity in a beautifully complicated way. This is the kind of thing we need to use for our performance testing. And they said, I gave it to them. I didn't hear back from them for about 2 weeks. And then I asked them about it, and the guy said, well, you didn't give us use cases. You gave us these programs. Aren't you guys programmers? Just look in the code. If you look in the code, all of the comments are the use cases that actually say what the accountant simulator is logging in, viewing the approval queue for each envelope. If management has approved it, then reject it, or ignore it, or approve it, and then end your session. And there's a probability table here, and there's a set of time delays, which we can change, think times, and we can now simulate 40, 50, 500 people using the site if we want to. But all these guys wanted to see was a Word document with this stuff. I mean, they didn't even want to see it in the form you see it right there. Is this like hard to read or something? It's right there. That is the text. So I was pretty disappointed in these guys because I realized they're not programmers. They weren't engineers. They weren't performance engineers. They were tool jockeys. That's what they were. And they wanted me to just let them use their tool and shut up. It's a hard time I have respecting people who behave that way. I think that if we're going to have self-respect, we must have reasonably if you say that you can write code, if you can write code in any way, and don't distinguish between being a scripter and being a programmer, please. I'll give you a little hint. I've been programming professionally for 33 years or something, 32 years. No one who understands programming makes any distinction between programming and scripting. It's the same thing. When you write a script that a computer reads, you are writing a program. You are using a programming language. There's no difference. Sometimes people say, but isn't one compiled and the other interpreted? And I go, that's like saying, but isn't programming different when you're on a 68,000 series microprocessor versus an 8086 series? Isn't it like totally... No, it's the same thing. Only the tiny irrelevant details are different. Not all the basic things are the same. If you program in any language, then you are a programmer. Any language at all, then you are a programmer. If you've ever been able to productively code in any language, then you can learn any other language, well, except Prolog. I just say that because my brain broke open when I tried to learn Prolog years ago. I'm still a little afraid to go back to that haunted house where it occurred. Prolog is a wacky language, those of you who know it. Maybe it's not as wacky as I think. Maybe there's something wrong with my brain, but... I also, don't understand rap music. There's a lot of things I don't get that other people seem to get. All right, so what final thought? And then I'm going to put down my microphone or, encourage you to say something because you should have been interrupting me all this time. And that is, where are the test cases? Okay, I showed you one thing where actually test cases were created. That was the FCC thing. So, okay, there's test cases there. But the thing I just showed you, I mean, was that 1,000,000 test cases that I produced, or was the whole thing together one test case? What a silly question. It's not important to talk about test cases. It's important to say, what does this tool do, and how can we use it, and how can it help us? That's what we need to do. Look at the testing, understand what we want to do, and then understand tools that might help us, and apply those tools in productive, creative ways. In some cases, we will write tools that generate amazing data, and then we will use the data in our testing. In other cases, we will write tools that help us record what we do so that we can be freer and have more fun while we do it because someone else is worrying about the administrative details. That's what I really hope that AI does for us in the future. I hope that artificial intelligence walks around behind me wherever I go, and I get to be the child. I get to say, I feel like doing this, and the artificial intelligence goes, okay, I'll stop traffic here and change the course of this river for you, so you get to do the thing you want to do. Thank you, Skynet. You know, that's what I hope will happen, and that's what I try to do with my tools. And if I'm helping you, which I'm happy to do, and I generally do it without charging you, by the way, because I want you to say yes. I make it up in volume. If I help you by writing a tool for you, what I'm thinking at all times is, how can I make your work more fun? How can I make you more powerful? How can I make bugs not be able to hide from you? That's what automation should be doing for us. Not creating a dim-witted tester out of tin cans that is trying to keep up with the human testers and learn about love. That's what we don't need to do. Thank you very much for watching me do this. Does anyone have anything they want to ask or challenge or say? Go ahead.
Is there an equivalent for Mac to the PSR on Windows?
Oh, I wish I had a Mac. As you see, I'm running Windows on my Mac because I really like Windows. This is the best laptop I have ever had. I am so impressed with the MacBook Pro. I'm so glad I got it. I can put stickers. It's the only computer I've ever put a sticker on. And look, I put all these stickers on it. But I don't know much about Macs yet. I kind of got this thinking, I'll learn about Macs. But what I actually do is I play games on the Mac side. I play Rome 2, Total War. And I do almost nothing else with my Mac than that because all of my class materials is all stuck in the PC world and it doesn't quite run right yet on the Mac world. Someday I'll know more about the Mac. Does anybody know the answer to that question? Is there a PSR-like tool for the Macintosh? Does anybody know? I'm not aware of one.
I think you can do some things in Automator, but I'm not sure exactly how to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can do some.
Nuts. Anything else anyone want to say or yes?
I think
Ultimate Man.
Yeah, what I think it's interesting is basically the results that you showed are results for problems that were brought to you.
Yeah.
And most of the times, discussions regarding automation that I've participated in are about how do we replace people with something else. So I think for managers, it's interesting to ask the questions in a better
I think if a
way.
manager asks that question, they should be replaced with something else.
I agree. But unfortunately, sometimes the managers above them think the same. So it's kind of, you should change the CEO also.
Well, I know. I mean, there's a grand struggle in our industry,
Yeah.
as you know.
What I'm trying to say is, as a manager, if you want people in your team to act like this, I think you can ask better questions. Like, this is a problem. How can we solve it? Go and find a solution.
Yeah.
Instead of saying, how do you automate that?
Right. Well, one thing I definitely recommend that you do is when your manager swoops down and says, I've heard that automation is the way to go and Netflix automates everything, is what you should do is say, automation is really cool. I have a lot of ideas about that. There's so much you can do with automation. So basically, agree like crazy. And you're telling the truth. I'm telling the truth when I say that. I'm absolutely into automation. What I then gently try to do is say, okay, tell me what kind of automation you were thinking about, and I'll tell you the kind of automation I was thinking about. And then you find out that they had one idea, like BDD. Isn't that supposed to save us? Yeah, okay. BDD means we're going to have to write a lot of code because you have to write the glue code to run the application. Unless you're talking about API testing, in which case maybe that's okay. But frankly, I wouldn't use the Cucumber tool for that. I write my own. So I just run my Perl programs and do that directly rather than use somebody else's CAN tool. But okay, I understand. Maybe you like Cucumber for that. For API testing, it might not be a bad thing. But if you have to go through a GUI, oh my God, it's a lot of work. So unless you have a very testable GUI, which you might have, this is the kind of thing I engage in. I say like, oh, all right, we can deal with automation. I have a lot of ideas about automation. We need to get somebody here who knows how to code and who is an engineering thinker. I think there are a lot of people who do quote automated testing who seem to be not programmers, and they seem to know how to use one tool, and that is one of the great dangers. So if you can say yes to that manager in terms of, yes, of course, let's use tools. I hear you. Let's use tools for efficiency and for power, and let's do it. Yes, we should have tools all over us. Then I think you can deflect some of the trouble. However, I do have a student who is suffering right now because she tried to do this deflection stuff and the manager just totally just shut her down and smashed her. She got smashed, squashed. I feel so bad for her. And all he was doing is he was just like, if she didn't give the exact response that he wanted to hear, which is, yes, BDD, yes, sir, let's all do BDD, then he was saying, oh, why are you wasting time? Just BDD. Just write your test cases and then automate them. Just don't waste my time. Just do that. You're going to do that? Yes, yes. Comply now, human. And he wouldn't let her deflect it. He wouldn't let her. She tried to talk. I gave her bullet lists to go over with him of different ways of using tools, and he just threw the whole thing away. I said, tell him that for deep testing, that requires human ingenuity. And he denied there was such a thing as deep testing. It's really hard for me to argue with someone who just doesn't believe there are skilled people in the world who know anything. And his way of approaching it is, if I haven't heard of it, it doesn't exist. So that was very depressing. And that happens. But I think in a lot of cases where people have a reasonable idea that, can't we use tools more? I think we don't need to fear that. I think we can take that and use it in a productive way that does not dehumanize the test process at all. It superhumanizes the test process. And we don't need to worry about that any more than we feel bad when we use ear plugs. Like, oh, am I becoming more of a machine when I plug in earbuds and listen to my iPhone through ear? No, I don't feel like I'm more of a machine. I don't start talking and walking like a robot. So,
Did you try to do a demo?
What?
Did you try to do a demo or a pilot or something like that, like small, to demonstrate that you
Well, yes. I suggest a demo. There's that too. That's what I do. You see, I part of how I deal with this. Oops. That's okay. Part of how I deal with this is I say, tools. Let me show you tools, and I put on my tool circus. And it's real hard for people to go, yeah, but you've never really done this and you don't know what you're doing, right? You know, they look at this stuff and they want to respond, and I say, I've got 10 tools left to show you. Don't speak yet, but that's not all. I can do this too, and I can do that. And so I'm able to establish myself, because I have a bunch of examples, as someone who maybe I should be the one talking about this, maybe you should leave this to me instead of telling me what to do, Mr. Manager. And that, often works. But of course, remember, I'm only really hired by people who are already willing to be yelled at and abused in certain ways. So it might be that I'm getting a skewed view of the world when I feel like I'm successful doing this. But that would be my advice to you anyway, is to have examples to show them. And if you don't have examples, then what I recommend is, let's say you don't have experience with this. Let's say you don't have examples. Let's say you have no credibility. Here's what you should do when they come down and say, automate everything. Is to say, okay, I'm on board. Let's do it. And then use that as a learning opportunity. You're going to learn a lot from what happens next. You could also quit and go somewhere else. Work for Altum. Which is a great place, by the way. I'm a big fan of Altum. But if you feel like I don't want to give up my job, they want me to automate everything, then you're going to have a wonderful learning experience. Because after all, I had that learning experience, except I thought it was a good thing. I was trying to automate everything for a good 5 years before I realized this really doesn't work. What I try to do with students now is to save them 5 years. Like, instead of doing your learning process for 5 years, I can accelerate that. Maybe you can try to automate everything for a few months before you get the hint that took me 5 years to get. That's my job now. I've already fought the lion and lost limbs to it, and I'm hoping that maybe you can, just sort of poke at the lion with the stick once and then say you did it, and move on to fighting koala bears or something a little easier. And that's what I'm trying to do now. So it could be a good thing for you to try to do this BDD stuff, to try to do the dehumanizing, let's just automate everything stuff. I just urge you, please learn from it. Watch very carefully what happens. Watch where the testing thinking goes. Watch what bugs get by you. And then go to the conferences and talk about your experiences, because I need to hear it. I need to learn from that. Maybe you'll have a different kind of success that I haven't had. Anything else? Anyone else want to say anything? Challenges are good. Oh, there's one I want from her. Give the thing to her.
I just wanted to add something. It's not necessarily a question.
Okay, cool. Compliments are good too.
Okay, so it's about the problem that you mentioned actually, managers versus automation. So a lot of managers, they say, okay, automate because we need it done faster and so on. Okay, but then they ask you, how long will it take you to automate and do all those test cases in scripts and so on? And then we, as automators, we raise expectations. Exactly what you mentioned before, that you do it in 3 days and then you lie and you say, it took me 2 hours. And then managers say, oh, great, then it's going to take you just a couple of days to finish it up and then everything is done. Then you're in trouble, and then they shut you down because you don't manage to wrap it up in a couple of days, obviously. And, well, that's the end of it. That's kind of what happens in many of the projects, and from my friends that work in IT, and I heard this.
That completely fits with my experiences too.
And that's the problem. We always raise expectations, and we try to look brave and to show how fast we work and how good we do it and so on, and then...
Yeah.
So
You look pretty young.
Let's not lie anymore.
You look pretty young to me. I can't really tell anymore, but you look like you're in your early 20s, something like that.
28.
28? When you lie about your age, you're supposed to lie in the other direction. You look younger than that to me. But I'm getting old enough I can't tell how old people are. But what I'm saying is it gets better when you get older. As you get more experience, and especially if you have a reputation in the field and you have lots of colleagues who can support you, and you have a higher standard for yourself, And as you get older relative to the other people that you're dealing with, people will listen to you more. You feel more comfortable saying, I've been down that road before, and this is what that road is going to be. And it becomes easy. You have more examples. You are able to tell stories, vivid stories about things that have happened that convince people and compel people. And they say, well, you're the expert. Maybe we'll listen to you. So it's really tough when you're young. But this is a great industry in that, unlike Hollywood, they don't throw you away when you get old and fat. They instead they have you come to your meetup in Romania. There's good times ahead, I think, for everyone as you just gain experience, and you'll calm down. Try not to lose heart along the way. That's the hard part. It's easy to lose heart, and a lot of people do leave testing because they get sick of it, and they say, "Well, I'll be a web designer now, where everyone always listens to me." And I assume, the web designers and other people always have it great compared to testers. I don't know. For me, I love testing too much, and I love teaching too much, and I'm addicted to the income too, which. Tester dollars. You know what I mean? The Benjamins. So,
We have the testers, but
you have to be a consultant to start getting that kind of money, by the way. So keep studying, stay in school, kids. I dropped out of school, but you should stay in school as long as possible so you won't be a competitor for me. And what I tried to do is I developed my public reputation to a degree where now I mostly only have to deal with people who already are ready to listen to me before I even meet them. So they won't even email me unless they're ready for me to talk to them about things. And it's once in a while someone comes to me and they have no idea of my reputation or anything, just like they looked up QA consultant online, testing consultant, I don't care, bring me anyone. And then they're very shocked to hear me tell them that they're, should not be doing that. And not only will I not take the job, but no one else should take the job either, and they really shouldn't be in that position where they could harm others with their bad decisions. But that's very rare. Mostly people are already like, I've heard about that thing you do. I read about it on your blog. Can you help us with that? And then there often is still problems because that's one guy. And then I immediately am assigned to work with someone else who has no idea. And he just says, can't we just automate everything? So I still have the problem, but I don't have nearly the problem that I would have if I had no reputation and no experience. So it'll get better. That's my promise to you. Plus, we need to band together a little bit more. We need to create community. That's what this is all about, creating community. When you have a collegial network of people you can draw upon, then you are able to say things like, I'm not going to work under these conditions. I quit. So I've got friends who've said that. And they tweeted, I quit today because I was asked to do a report that was full of lies, and I refused to lie. So I quit my job. And then the community comes together and helps them get a new job in the following week because we retweet and we use social media. And in this particular case I'm thinking of, the guy had a job the next week. And I felt very good about that. When somebody stands up for good work, and they pay a price for that, they should also get the benefit from that, the benefit of admiring colleagues who do their best. And that also happened to me. In 1999, I quit my job because it was either quit my job or throw an office chair through a plate glass window. And I thought, getting arrested, not good for my career. So I quit. And within a week, word got out, and I got a big contract with Microsoft. because a fan of mine at Microsoft heard that I was available. But all my friends, I just didn't know I had so many friends. I thought I had a panic attack when I quit. I've had 2 panic attacks in my entire life. One when I was lost in the woods when I was 12 years old with my stupid dog who knew the way home, it turned out, and didn't tell me. And I finally left my dog behind and crossed a river and found a way home. And my dog was at home when the guy drove me. So I still kind of resent that. But anyway, I'm getting off. I was having a panic attack. I couldn't breathe. I was hyperventilating. And I'm like, why can't I breathe? This is strange. And I found out later, it's a panic attack. And I had the same kind of thing happen the day I quit my job, when I'm the only breadwinner of the family, and I can't pay my mortgage, and I can't pay any of my bills. But I decided I was going to quit my job without having any prospects. That was the day I started Satisfice with my wife. And by the way, my wife said, everything's going to be fine. So get married to someone with no critical thinking skills, and your life will be really good. I am so glad my wife didn't recite all the reasons I shouldn't have quitted. Instead, she just was super supportive, and it worked, and I felt better. But then my brothers and sisters started helping me, and my colleagues. I had a colleague buy me a computer, and I realized, spending some years developing a collegial network where I do favors for people, I help everyone that I possibly can, I try to be a good person, really pays off sometime when you say, I'm stuck in this job and I'm gonna explode, and I have to leave. And I don't want to get sick, and I don't want to hurt anybody, but I can't stay here anymore. So start building your collegial network safety net right now. And some of the people in this room should be the safety net for other people in this room. And I want to be part of that safety net too. It's been so powerful for me. So I like when people email me. I like when they Skype me. I always answer emails. If I don't answer an email that you send to me, it's because it scrolled down while I was traveling and I missed it. So just send it again. It's how I do marketing. It's how I procrastinate. It's how I enjoy life, is by helping people with questions and getting into conversations with them. But of course, a lot of people do this, so I sometimes get overwhelmed. But I always help everyone that I can, because I helped a guy in Croatia a couple of years ago, and it turned out he said something to someone, and I got a multi-tens of thousands of dollar gig out of that, because I gave him 2 free coaching things. I didn't know that anyone listened to him, but it turned out that he got me a job. So that's one of the reasons why I help people, just for purely selfish, vampiric reasons. But it's what we all should be doing for each other, so that we can build a community of serious intellectuals who really want to do good work, and somewhere out there's an employer who says, please, find me these people. I am working for one such company. Unfortunately, they're in the United Arab Emirates. But I am working for a huge bank right now that says, James, we want to have everyone be a context-driven, skilled tester. What did you just say it was? Robot man testers? Iron Man test. We want to hire all these Iron Man testers, and we want liberal arts people, and we want systems thinkers, and we want all these skilled people who think. That's what we want to hire, but they're not in the UAE. Where can we find them? Can you help us find them? So I do have a few clients who say, how can we hire these people? They're not looking for ISTQB clones. They're not looking for BDD cloners. They're looking for people who use their minds. There are those people out there, but you're going to have to use social media and work within our networks so that we can help each other find those jobs. Yeah.
What happens if you're already in that? Sorry. What happens if you're already in that bad spot where the strategy is automated? How do you start changing it? And quitting is not an option.
Well, one of the interesting things about if it's already happened is maybe you've already put a lot of money into it. Your company's already put a lot of money into it. And maybe having already put a lot of money into it, you can look at it and say, well, given the fact that they're here, what's the most we can make of it? What kind of benefits can we get from this? Now, unfortunately, one of the situations that arises with that is that there comes to be so much automation that every single person is just maintaining the automation with their full time. There's no time for anything but just keep the robots going. And that is something that Ken Kaner and I named the regression testing crisis when we first encountered it in the year 2000. And how that company, Hewlett-Packard, solved the problem is not by listening to us at first, but they outsourced to India. So they could do the same thing but cheaper. And, oh, good, that solves it. But now they're running into the same problem again because it's now grown, and now even the Indians are too expensive. So they, at some point, have to say, maybe this doesn't work. If we are so much maintenance that's all we do is just keep the robots going. So that means we have no time to do any new tests and no time to do deep testing. Now bugs are going to start getting out. Unless you're doing amazing development, which you might be doing, but bugs start getting out. And maybe some bugs get out that you don't want. Now, if you're in a DevOps-y kind of world, you might have a rollback kind of system, and maybe the risk is not very high. That's one of the things that DevOps tries to do, is it tries to lower the risk by being able to roll back and all that. Now, I'm not convinced that that stuff always works, but the problem I have with DevOps is I've never been on a DevOps team because no DevOps team would ever hire me. So I've never seen the inside. It's like North Korea to me. It's completely, we hear that North Korea is a bad place, but maybe it's great once you're there. I don't know. So here's what happened at Hewlett-Packard when they finally decided to fix things, to do stuff better and get out of this crisis. So all this automation was there. What they did is they realized that most of their automation never detected any problems and that they were maintaining it. So that means it would break, but not because of a bug. And then they would fix it, so they would have to do the maintenance, but they would not be finding bugs. I find that is often true about unit testing. When I write unit testing, most of my time spent in unit testing is not dealing with any kind of bug that it found. It's because it broke because I made the product better. So that's a lot of work to do. Is it really worth it? So they did an analysis and they found out that 2/3 of their tests had never found a bug at all. So they just deleted them. They just put them in cold storage and they found that they took that time that they got, because now they had more time, and they did exploratory, creative test design where they didn't try to save all the tests in test cases, and their find rate went way up. Now, what I was told, although these are not reliable numbers, and I never published them because I can't defend them, but what the manager told me is they went from a 25% find rate to an 85% find rate. Now, if you're smart and skeptical, you'll say, so what exactly is a find rate, James? And my answer is, I never got a clear answer about that. So I don't know what that number means, except that, though, 85 seems to be bigger than 25, so that's magic, you know? I know that the manager was excited about this, and she wanted to write an article with me about how great it was to go to exploratory testing and that she should have listened to me 3 years earlier. But because Hewlett-Packard wasn't willing to release the raw data so that we could publish the raw data, I wasn't interested in writing an article about it. Because then it just becomes one of those articles saying, I've got this best practice, trust me, it's great. Look at my numbers, 85, 95, 99, 99.9. Don't those numbers sound good? Oh, did I mention 99.99? I got that number too. Yeah, and you go like, yeah, but what are you measuring? I can't tell you, it's all secret.
70% of all numbers are made up.
Yeah, 70% of all numbers are made up. wait a minute. Could it be that that number is made up too? 70% of 70 might be made. So what I suggest, if you're already stuck in that, is watch the escape rate. And I don't mean the escape rate in the sense of measuring percentages. I mean, look at any bug that gets by you. Any bug that gets by. What I would do is I would make it my personal mission to carefully analyze every single bug that was not found by the automation. And say, well, where was it found then? And how was it found if the automation didn't find it? And I would raise the visibility of all the things that automation is not doing for us. And the second thing I would try to do is track the maintenance cost of the automation, which is often secret. So I want to try to make that visible. And I make it my job to do that because probably no one else is going to do that in the company. And then I would do some sort of pilot thing where I say, why don't we run a 2-hour bug hunt and just see what we find? I've done this in medical device companies and people are amazed at like no preparation. Just bring people to a conference room and say, test this for 1 hour and look at all the bugs we found that nobody knew about before. And then management goes, whoa. We were so worried that this would just be a waste of time, but it turns out it's really easy for humans to find interesting bugs, much easier than we thought. And they need to see examples like that. They need to hear stories like that. I actually produced a video, a 10-minute video for that medical company of the event happening, and then I put subtitles on it, and I highlighted the bugs that were found, and then they asked me to delete the video. So I don't have the video, but they have it, and because they didn't like the fact that I had videoed all their medical devices falling apart. You know, they didn't want that to get out. You know, I don't know why. I guess defibrillators should defibrillate and never have bugs in them. Does anyone really believe that? I guess they had a heart attack when they saw me testing their defibrillators. Good thing the defibrillators work just barely well enough to save them. So I do videos. I show the exploratory testing. I show the videos then to management. That's another thing you can do. And they can go, oh, that's what you mean. Well, that looks okay. You know, that looks all right. So that's various things that you could do to try to deal with that situation. No matter what situation you're stuck in, if you choose to, you can always learn from it. The line I draw is where I feel like I'm being unethical, where I feel like my work is useless and that I'm essentially wasting company money, or in some cases taxpayer money. I feel like I'm just wasting it because some process group feels like we have to check this box or else the sky will fall. So we're willing to waste our corporate money on checking all these silly boxes that we don't even understand. And if someone wants to pay me money to do that, I say to them, I could do that, but you pay me too much. You're going to have to cut my salary by 9/10, and then I'm willing to do that. Why are you paying me so much? And then that starts to get the point across that I'm not going to just do anything. You pay me so much, I have to do good work. Sorry, bad work is not one of the services I offer. No one has ever actually cut my pay, though. They've never called my bluff on that. All right, I don't know anything about time. I'm personally willing to go all night, but it's up to you. If there's any other comment or a question, go ahead, hit me. Oh, we got two here. All right, yes, in the back.
When hardware is involved, what do you think about virtualization? Because
When what's involved?
Hardware. We have to test software and hardware in different combinations.
Right.
I mean, like massive combinations, but you don't really have it on hand, and they make you have to use virtual environments.
Yes.
Have you had experience with that? What's your thought?
Yeah, I had experience in a court case trying to virtualize my environment, and then I realized that the nature of the court case was that the virtualization I was using could not possibly help me because the thing that we were trying to test was the specifics of this particular hardware, not the functionality of it. So I've tried using that and run into the problem of, oh, it seemed good on paper, but actually it doesn't help us at all. But I've also had a lot of apparently good experiences with virtualization. They had at a company called Trimble Navigation. I worked with a simulator of a $35,000 laser topography scanning tool, and they didn't have very many of these units, hanging around. But the simulator allowed me to navigate and look at a lot of it. So that was nice. I think it could be fine, but I think you have to keep in your mind, hey, the real thing is going to be different because it will heat up. It will be affected by brownouts, by voltage fluctuations. It will get wet. It will different things will happen. It will perform differently probably, and we can't get too confident about what we learn about it in its virtual state. But of course, having listed all of those potential problems, maybe it's okay to still use it. Having said that, people keep telling me that the Android simulators out there are apparently terrible, or so I hear. They're useless or totally unreliable, or I just keep hearing mobile testers grumble about Android simulators of various kinds being not very helpful. So I guess depending on the simulator or the virtualization that you're using, it's going to be okay or not. Certainly for performance, I would obviously think maybe this isn't telling us much about reality. The thing about hardware is there's such long baselines, so you have to get a simulator because that hardware is just not going to be there. Having said that, the last big project I was on, it was 5 months till we got to see the product because it was a big hardware product, and they just weren't ready with the hardware. And when they showed it to us, in the first 5 minutes, there was this loud bang like a gunshot, and the smoke filled the air, and they said, wait, we need to look at this. And then a few minutes later, they said, it's okay, we didn't need that relay anyway. Which is bizarre. Like, you just put extra relays in your thing, and then they said, please don't turn the power above 20 watts. Please don't feed it after midnight, don't get it wet, so it was like the curse of the monkey claw all of a sudden. Yes, who else we have? Yes, go ahead, hit me.
How do you find the motivation to keep testing each day?
How do I find the motivation to do what each day? To testing? To keep testing each day.
Deep testing.
Deep testing each day. Oh, that's such an easy question to answer. Oh, I like when I get an easy question. I used to get burnt out when I was a developer. I started being a developer when I was 16, professional developer. I did video games for money when I was 16 and 17 and 18, and I burnt out. I got a bunch of money, and then I was able to live for 6 months without having to work because I got a bunch of money from writing a bunch of games, and I really needed the time off because I was so sick of it. And then I got married, and my wife spent all my money, so I had to go back to work. And that is the big incentive for a lot of people to work, is that their loved ones spend all their money. And so that's fine. So I went back to work. And I was okay for a while, but then after about 2 years, I got burnt out again. and I got burnt out so badly that I would sit down at the keyboard and immediately have this feeling like I'm going to throw up. Like I couldn't concentrate. I could not do the work. Just the keyboard would cause me to freak out. Later, the third time I got burnt out, I developed a phobia of email that lasted about 6 months. I couldn't open email. I couldn't open any email because every email was like needles sticking into my brain. Another person asking me to do another thing, and I couldn't handle it, and I couldn't touch email until Jerry Weinberg, my mentor, saved me. He talked to me and helped me understand what was going on. So since the age of 27, I have never been burned out. I am always motivated. I have mastered this. Okay, so I can give you the answer. For me, I discovered that I can do anything and love it and do it day in and day out as long as I feel like I'm impressing somebody. I need to know that I'm loved. I need to know that someone is saying, we're so glad James is here. He'll save us again today. If I believe that that is happening, then my heart sings and I'll do anything. I'll take out the garbage. I'll do anything you want as long as you're saying, we're so glad you're here. And I think you mean it. Then I'm like, yes. I need that. And so when I burnt out as a programmer, I was working in a team of one. I didn't have anyone to work with. I was working in a garage owned by my boss. And I didn't notice that when I was working with him, when we would pair up on some things, I'd get excited, I'd feel good. But when I was me just alone, I would just get more and more depressed with every passing day. And the thing with developing the email thing was, the email phobia is that I said yes to everything, all opportunities. I was so ambitious. I just said, yes, I'll do that. I'll do that. And I was crushed under saying yes. So Jerry gave me permission to say no, to say, you have to understand your limitations. So I need to understand my limitations and not take on too much. That's one thing I know I have to do. And the other thing is when I have this little voice in my mind that says, this is not fun. This is not fun. I know if I ignore that voice, then what the voice eventually does is it says, oh, okay, you won't listen to me? All right, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go over to this panel, and I'm going to start ripping out wires in your brain and pushing red buttons and see how sick you get before you start listening to me, mister. So you got to listen to that voice that's saying, this is not right for you. This is not right for you. And when you do things that are fun and they fill you with energy, notice that. So through that process, I eventually figured out I thrive on feeling needed, on feeling that I'm serving someone. I need to serve in order to feel alive. So that's why I'm married. That's why I love being a father. My son doesn't serve me. I serve him. That's my attitude. I tell him that all the time. It freaks him out. That's right, son. I say to him, I didn't negotiate with you to bring you into this world, and I won't let you leave this world, so I must pay the price. And that price is everything that I have is yours, and I am your servant for as long as I am alive and you are alive, and you're not allowed to die, so that's my entire life. And he goes, okay, Dad. And I understand other fathers don't necessarily have that attitude, but that's my attitude. And it makes me feel like I'm needed, and so it makes me feel that I'm alive and I need to be in this world. So I don't know, maybe that doesn't work for everybody, but when you want to test and you want to love testing and you want to love it every day, you have to find out what is it that's really making your heart sing about it. I suspect it's not the fact that you get to use Excel. Like, I get to fly a Learjet. I get to use Excel every day. Oh, I'm so jealous. And I suspect it has something to do with the people you're working with and with their respect for you. And I'm kind of addicted to self-respect. I want to have self-respect, and I want to earn self-respect, to know that it's not hollow, but that I deserve to respect myself. And my upbringing says you have to work hard for that. You have to make yourself better and better. You have to hone your skills, and then you deserve to have self-respect. That's the culture I'm from, and that's all tied in with and then people respect me too. I respect myself. People respect me, and I love what I do because of that. So try to find that current within you, and then it won't matter what you're doing. You'll be willing to do it day in and day out. That's how my wife spends 18 years sacrificing her own interests to raise this son of hers. And now he just published a novel, and she just is basking in like, my 18 years was worth it. That sacrifice was worth it. And they have dinner together with he and his wife twice a week, and she gave up a lot, health, opportunities, all kinds of things she could have done with her life, but she decided to raise a son, and she feels rewarded for that all the time. That's the way it ought to be. So she also is doing that, hooking into, why am I doing this? It's very hard, but why am I doing this? And every day she gets up and she does the hard work that I don't want to do. She does taxes. She does housework. She does all this stuff that I don't want to do, that I would just hire someone to do if I had to do it. But she does it, and she has a smile on her face. Why? Because it's meaningful. So find the meaning in your work, the meaningful connection. I urge you to read a book, by the way, that's related to this. It's called Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. He describes living in a death camp and how he survived the death camp by finding meaning in that experience. And he pointed out that people who died, some of them could have survived, but they lost touch with the meaning of it. They felt it was a meaningless torture. And so they lost the will to live. And so he developed this whole theory out of this called logotherapy, which is that if people know what their lives mean, then they love living that life. That's a good point to end on, I think. I'm going to end on that right now. Thank you for listening to me. It was great therapy for me. I hope it was helpful for you, and I hope to get emails occasionally from you, but not too many. All right? Thank you.